story. Right, so what you're doing is you are an experiential engineer. You are actually engineering this experience for a person in a very intentional way. It's not just let's just throw some activities so that the person can come and just have a good time. You're managing the event from start to finish, from street to sea is one way to think about it. Okay? And there's layers to the experience. The more they experience, the more that gets unveiled. Okay, so program elements. First one to consider is the theme. The theme is kind of the main message of what you're trying to convey. It's the content and the visuals. Ambiance is a part of that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But one thing they ask in the theme is how can you make that evident from before they arrive to when they, and then when they arrive. So before they arrive, it might be through your materials, your promotions. When they arrive, what is the one way that you can kind of create this, oh wow, it's so obvious, right, and fun. So for our capital campaign that I talked about, the one where it was Get in the Game, and we did football, we actually built a football field in the courtyard. And so we made it out of AstroTurf, and that's just PVC pipe and a football balloon. But as soon as people walked on the campus, they realized, okay, there's something going on here, and I'm really excited to find out a little bit more, kind of piques the curiosity. You can do it before they arrive, too. So one of the people that I met, who's a retreat coordinator, had a men's retreat, and the theme was under construction. So they put a bulletin ad, and it was actually not directed to guys, it was directed to women, and it said, women, would you like a remodel in your house? Well, send your husband to the men's retreat because it's under construction, right? We'll make him into a new, better man, right? So then they go out into the outside in the patio, and for the sign-up table, they see this porta potty. And they go into the porta potty, and the guy takes a paper cup, and he walks the porta potty, comes out with a cup of yellow liquid. It's lemonade. But the guy thought it was really cool. And then they went to the table to sign up, and instead of registration form, it was just a big piece of plywood, and they put their name and information on there. You know, when they went there, they got a tool belt, and all the walls had the Tyvek material on the walls. So it's just a great example of how the theme was carried from the very beginning all the way through the event. It sticks in people's minds. So the theme makes a big difference. Program. The way I define program is everything that kind of happens in the stage or main stage or whatever the main room is. So that would be things like any kind of fun elements, anything maybe training, creative arts. So for our Thrive conference, we did this boating thing, surfing thing, just as a fun activity. We had training time. We had various groups come and perform. So that would all be considered program type of things. Speakers, artists, talent, things like that. Okay. So speakers, that's a lot of times what churches think about. And so speakers are really, really important. So most of the time now it's so great with technology. You can just check their videos online to see if they're any good or not first. As for references, that's really helpful. Sometimes people might be good speakers, but the place might not have the best experience. So if a speaker can provide references that you can call the places that they worked with, that's also really helpful. A tip to make it easier, only have one person contact the speaker. We had multiple people on the team contacting the speaker, and it ended up being lots of confusion. And so it was kind of crazy because for the Thrive conference, I ended up being the speaker contact, and we had 80 speakers. And so what we did was we just had a form for each speaker, and so that way we could track where they were on the process. So a paper trail is really helpful, email trail is really helpful to help document things. Be sure to contact speakers regularly, and one important thing to communicate with them is culture. Because a speaker that comes to Saddleback and is dressed in a suit and a tie, obviously would never really connect with the audience because people instantly think, this person doesn't get our culture, right? So whatever your culture is for your church, be sure you communicate that with the speaker so that they understand. And then think about what other elements can there be. At our volunteer appreciation, our staff did a dance for our volunteers, and that was just really, really fun. We practiced a lot, and people said that was the highlight because it was so surprising and so unexpected. We took the song "You're Wonder Baby, You're Wonderful," and we changed it to towards the "Baby, You're So Beautiful." That's, One Direction, "You're So Beautiful," and we changed it to "You're So Wonderful," and we had the lyrics pertain to volunteer serving. So you can do drama, especially people really engage in drama. You can do videos. There's lots of different ways, music, things like that. So those are other elements that might go as part of the program. Next is activities. Activities are secondary ways to be able to engage that contribute to the overall experience. So small groups, expos or trade shows, raffles, games, excursions, even free time is considered an activity, like if you're doing a retreat, because you don't want to jam the whole weekend so full that they don't have time to decompress and process what they're learning. So those are really important. One of the activities that we found has been really great is photo ops. I was not a big believer in photo ops until I came to Saddleback, but we're in the selfie age now, and everybody loves to take a selfie, and so we provide photo opportunities for people. They're great focal points when people walk into the lobby so that they can instantly see what the theme is, and they can take pictures. We did something called a s'mores bar for our campfire barbecue, and because we couldn't do it outside, we just had little sterno cans on the table, marshmallows and chocolate and graham crackers, and it was a huge hit. It was so crowded. There were so many people. We had crafts for the kids, so this was a paper bird mask on our international foodie night. So these are all examples of activities that contribute to the overall goal of the event. And then the next element is food. Food is really, really important. It's language of love. It's really fun to match the food to the theme. So for our luau night, we actually got a roast pork. And we didn't have time to sit there and actually carve it in person, which we were trying to do, but because there were so many people, we ended up with 400 people or something, we had to pre-slice everything, so it's just stuck the head out there. Food is actually one of our major costs for all of our events. We're always very aware of it because the church culture is very used to having free food, but it really adds up after a while. So we've been trying to figure out how to do that. Food doesn't have to cost a lot of money. For example, at our volunteer appreciation night, I was just so amazed because the small group that did this actually handmade all the desserts. So they went and bought churros from Costco and dipped them in chocolate pudding. And anyway, there was also presentation is just a big part of it as well. So, but they saved a tons of money because they went this direction instead of buying everything at a bakery. Presentation of food is huge. One way to get presentation really great for food is to use levels. Just use boxes. We use crates a lot. Just stack them on top of each other. This one, it was just levels and lettuce leaves, basically. You know, you can make anything look good by putting a ton of lettuce leaves in there. So presentation gives that wow experience. The number one mistake I see with food is that event directors do not think about flow of food. Food actually needs to go in the order. For example, plates, napkins, salad, then the dressing after the salad, not before. You know, things like that. Coffee, tea, drinks should be in a separate table, not the same table because you get clogs. So whenever we do our food layouts, we always draw a traffic flow arrow to see where are people coming from, how did they get through, and how did they come out. So whenever you draw a map, that really helps streamline everything so you don't get big bottlenecks. And mementos. Mementos are take-home items. Help them remember the event. So for our volunteer appreciation event, we actually had medals made. They actually were not very expensive, but we could create our own artwork because our theme with the Olympic theme was Saddleback Serving Champions, Saddleback Champions. So we just had that logo there, and they were just such a big hit. Everybody wanted a medal and took it home with them. But it's a way for them to feel appreciated, but also to remember what happened at the event. Okay, the next one is the people. And when it comes to people, the event, the first thing to consider is a team. The biggest mistake of beginning church event planners is they try to do everything themselves. So what happens is people get stressed out because there's so much to do. Number two, they're the holders of information, so nobody else knows what's going on, and then people get burned out and so forth. So even for small events, I try to find at least one other person that can come and help me. It's a lot more fun to do it with partners, with other people. It's a chance to train other people. And we also believe in the Mack truck rule, which is like if you get hit by a Mack truck, the event goes on without you, without a hitch. It's kind of impossible if you're the only person running the event. So it's way, way more fun. And the size of your team will depend upon the complexity of your event. So for beginning events, it is true a lot of times you will end up doing the event a lot of it yourself because you're not able to pull a team just because nobody knows what the event is. But the goal should be to build out the event. So what I do is I always make an org chart of all the different positions, and as time goes on, my goal is to fill in every one of those spaces. I had a co-director over in Northern California when we first started the VBS. So the first year, you could see these squares. That was him and me doing a lot of these different leadership positions. And we were able to find some leaders, but there were a lot of areas that just did not have leaders because we had to do them. However, having the rest of the team members there did carry a lot of the weight, and it helped a ton. Now, 5 years later, when I left, our org chart looked like this. We had lots of leaders in lots of areas. Some of these weren't filled in yet. But eventually, we got people to lead all the different areas. He and I still took some of the parts that, promotion, for example, just because so much had to be done on a church-wide level. It was really hard for a volunteer to do it. But our goal of trying to find leaders for all the different areas really grew the team. So the team, when we first started, maybe was, 10, 12 people. By the time I left, we had 30 people on our leadership team. And those were team leaders. They were leading their own teams. So building a team is a top goal for an event director. So, and then key people, key volunteers that maybe might not lead a team, but they'll be there at every work day. They'll be there to help with everything. They'll come, extra hours. They'll stay late. They'll come early. These are great people to have on your team. When you're recruiting volunteers, the best way is word of mouth. I haven't found anything else that beats that method. And so it's asking other people, hey, do you know someone who wants to do this or whatever? It's conversations with people, noticing what they like to do. One of the reasons I love doing events is because I meet new volunteers and I watch them in action. I'm like, wow, that person's really good at that. So then I'll go afterwards and say, hey, I noticed you did a great job. Would you like to help out in this event, right? And when you recruit people, there's a right way and wrong way to go about it. The wrong way is, oh, Sue, I asked 50 other people. Everybody said, no, you are my last hope. Can you please do this, right? As opposed to, Sue, I'm so excited. There is a new event coming. It's the first time we're ever doing this. You get the chance to be on the pioneering edge of what we're doing here. It's our chance to reach the community. We're going to have this amazing event that's going to look like this. Could you be a part of this? Night and day in the difference approach, right? It's about casting vision for volunteers to get them excited about joining. The next part to consider for people is the staff. How many of you are actually staff? Okay, and then volunteers the rest, so it's about half-half. Okay, so one of the key things that we found has been really useful is defining staff roles for events. Sometimes what happens is there are unspoken expectations, especially if a volunteer is running an event. They think, oh, all the pastors should be at my event. And then the event comes and nobody shows up. They feel abandoned, right? Now that's clarified up front in terms of, is the pastor or pastors, are they going to be there? Are they going to do anything? It really helps in terms of expectations then. Because it's impossible for the pastors to go to every event that's going on, right? So for our VBS, for example, we decided this is all hands on deck. This doesn't mean that all the pastors and the staff are leading anything, but they have to be at the event and contributing in some way. We have different designations. We have all hands available, which means there's a few people running the event, and if you're asked to lead a team, then you lead a team, but if you're not asked, you don't have to go to the event, right? And then the last one is just, people just do their own event. So that way we're able to clarify people. So for our VBS, for example, because all of the staff was there, it was really amazing. I was really surprised. A lot of people told me, gosh, I came from a church where none of the pastors are ever there. It's always just the children's ministry running it. But because we were so over the top of our event, we just pretty much took over everything. It was all the staff were there. And it created this sense of unity, all church together, all that type of thing. But leadership, defining the staff roles is really important. And then developing leadership buy-in is really important as well. Because even if the pastor's not going to be there, or whoever your leader is, it's really important for them to believe in your event and be behind it because they will be an advocate for you. And if you are on staff, you can do that for your leaders who are running events. And then the last area is volunteers. Okay, so volunteers, a couple things to consider. What kind of requirements do you need? For example, do you need fingerprinting, security checking for any of our volunteers? How are you going to recruit them? Think of multiple recruitment channels. So for us, we do online recruiting. There's an online website. You can write down signup.com. It's free, and it's a great way to ask people to sign up for your event. You have different shifts and the different roles and the descriptions, and then people just go click, click, click. You sign up, they get an automatic reminder. It's just beautiful. Okay, so that's signup.com. Another thing we do is there's a digital version, and then there's a live in-person version. So the in-person version, we create this board where we have all the different roles and then the different times they have. Then there's a form that they fill out for what they want to do, and when they fill it out, we have all their contact information, but we put a circle on whatever time shift that they want. This becomes a great visual tool for our congregation to be able to see how many more spots, how many more people are needed. We've had a number of people come go, wow, you guys need a lot of help. Okay, I'll help you. Some people are motivated by that. Okay. Think about training. What kind of, do they need training? If so, when is it going to be? What are you going to cover? And then caring for your volunteers. Food is always great. We've discovered volunteers need coffee. If you don't give them coffee, they're very unhappy. So we try to have coffee all the time. And then we have something called an encouragement team at our VBS. This encouragement team's role is to just go around, give people candy and water, and say thank you for serving. And I cannot believe what a huge impact this team has to the overall experience. Our volunteers came away and they're like, oh, I feel so loved, this is so wonderful. So care for your volunteers, and then be sure to thank them at the end. All right, and then we get the next one, promotion. So there's 7 things to think about for promotion. Promotion will look different depending on the size of your church, but the first thing, no matter the size of your church, is to define your audience, which we already talked about earlier. Right? You might have multiple audiences, but it's always great to pick at least one main one so you have an idea as you're promoting. Next thing, look at your competition. Competition is not really other churches, it's really what is in the person's life that is competing with their attention. And a lot of times it's family sports activities, gatherings, it's work. People just don't have a lot of free time. And so look at the different competition. We've discovered in our church, because it's so large, that we're our own worst competition. We have so many ministries going on that at times we feel that we're competing with one another. So what we've tried to do as a staff is synergize our efforts to see if departments that are creating different events can somehow partner together and do the same event. That helps. So it will look different at every church. Create top-of-mind awareness. It's also known as TOMA. TOMA is the first thing people will think of. So for example, someone's husband passes away. We want top-of-mind awareness to think, I really feel like I need support. Oh, Saddleback Church, I heard it's a really great place that helps people who are really hurting. I'm going to go there, right? That's top-of-mind awareness. So that's part of the reason why we do these events, because we want to create this in our community so people become familiar with the name of Saddleback Church and that they'll come to Saddleback when they're having trouble. So the first year it's really hard to create this because no one's heard of your event, but always be thinking, if it's the first time, about how you could create that for future years. When we first started our VBS up north, nobody had heard of it, nobody knew about it. The very first summer we went out and hung 1,000 door hangers by hand. We fed a bunch of teenagers In-N-Out burgers and Slurpees and bribed them that way for them to go around and hang it. It was like hot sun, it was horrible, it was miserable. But what happened was that our community started to hear about it. We put a huge banner on the side of the building and we left it up the whole time during the event so that people could see what was going on. We rented big inflatables and we put them in full view of the street so that people could see and the kids would be like, wow, what's going on there? So these were all things that raised the visibility level within the community so that people were aware of what was going on. So this past year, which is now 7 years later, I think, the entire VBS sold out within 36 hours. It's 475 kids. And the reason was because now it's on top of people's awareness. They are waiting in line for the registration to open so that they can instantly jump on because we've created such an awesome event and one that's worth going to year after year. And that's creating TOMA. Develop community partnerships. This means building goodwill with the community. So for example, we opened a Peace Center, which is kind of a community resource center with a food pantry and English as second language, tutoring services, things like that, and invited the mayor to come. And so developed a partnership that way. My fonts are so weird. Sorry about that. So we also get donations from stores. A lot of stores have a community budget where they will set aside money during the year to help donate to different organizations. So you have to kind of find out what the schedule is for the company and then try to get it early in the year. But what happened with our VBS was that our food person was so great at developing relationships with the vendor that every year we got free Pete's Coffee, free Noah's Bagels, free pastries from Safeway. And in fact, the Pete's Coffee person enjoyed the event so much the manager would come to our event every year just to serve coffee to our volunteers because she just loved being there. And so that was an example of how when you develop the relationships over time, it's just mutually beneficial for both parties. Create a consistent brand. Okay, so these are titles and imagery that when people see it, they'll instantly know what it is. We never called our VBS, we called it Breakaway. And that was because the church that gave us their program, they called it Breakaway, so we just adopted it. But now, instead of saying, hey, VBS, which nobody knows what that is, we said Breakaway, which at first nobody knew what it is, but now everybody knows what it is. And so what will change is the theme, but the event is always called Breakaway every year. That might not work for your event, but it's something to consider. Maybe you do an annual retreat or something every year. Maybe it's the same thing. That way, it's a lot easier to promote because there's already some history and people already know about it. Remember the rule of 7. The rule of 7 is that people need to hear the message 7 times before they'll remember it. That means that if you have one event, you have to think of 7 different ways to promote that event. You need to repeat it week after week after week. The average church attendance now is people attend church once every 3 weeks, which means if you announced your event once or twice, chances are a third of your congregation will never hear it. So when we try to promote, we actually have a big spreadsheet of all the different ways that we're going to promote. One of the most effective ways that we have found to promote is social media. I really love what the movie Ben-Hur did. This was actually during a conference. They set up this booth with cardboard cutouts, and what you would do is you would go and you would take a selfie, and then you could post it on social media. And they had a little machine, but you don't really need a machine to do that. But it was just so fun because our team really got into it, right? And so people are taking this picture because it's fun and they want to share it with friends. Well, now everyone's just spread the word about Ben-Hur. Well, that can also be true of your events as well. And so we are launching something called 4 Weeks of Christmas in December. Every week, it's kind of like Saturday Night Live where there's one thing every week. But 3 weeks in advance, we're creating a photo op with a hashtag. And so people, if they do that, they get to have a prize. And they just show us that they posted it and so forth. But we create a great photo op. People can take a selfie, they can post it, and they get a prize. And now it's just spread the word. Because the way, in terms of Facebook and so forth, that you reach wider audiences is through people's friends' networks. So that's why we try to give people content to be able to post on social media, because what happens is their friends see it. Another way to promote is in the lobby. So we'll create a display table of some sort that really catches people's attention. For our VBS, it was a ocean voyage theme, and so we kind of put netting and things like that. But the lobby it's not very big, so it really stood out as soon as you walked in. Aside that we have a really big lobby, so we did a bigger display type of thing. It doesn't look the best right now. We lost our tablecloth, but it was eye-catching. The kids loved the inflatable whale. Every kid wanted to jump on top of it, But it created lots of interest, and so that was an in-person eye-catching feature. Video is huge as well in terms of social networking. We discovered that when we just post a photo, we get like maybe 200 engagements. When we post a video, we get 6,000. So any kind of video that you can make, even if it's on your phone, use video because it's really, really effective. Okay. Temperate. Okay. Next thing, think about is place. Okay. So place is your site. And the first thing you consider is your purpose, to make sure that you pick a site that fits your purpose. If you have a youth retreat in a 4-star hotel, it's probably not going to be a really good match. If you go off-site, it's really important to visit the site. We went to a retreat once where someone was like, hey, that's a great retreat place, you should totally go there, it's really awesome. So our whole church packed up and we went there and we discovered the whole place was swarming with 1-inch long ants. And so during the night, I was just so paranoid that we would drop things on the floor because literally there were ants just crawling around the floor the whole time we were sleeping. And someone was like, we really should have visited this place. Yeah. But that's what happens if you don't visit the place and just go by somebody's referral. It can really come back to bite you. When we visit, we like to take pictures and video of the whole thing. It's really helpful for people who aren't there so you can show it to them later. It also helps because sometimes you have to figure out furniture or how many people will fit in a room. If it's all on pictures and video, you don't have to go back again. If you are having your event at church, try to find out what's going on before, during, and after your event. Before, the reason is because if a group comes in and messes up everything, you can be prepared and have people in place to reset it. During, because sometimes it might get confusing, people might go to the other event instead of yours. And then after, so that you know how to reset your place so that it's ready for the next group coming in. Okay, so clear communication on all of that. One of the really important things that creates a wow event is really the decor or the ambiance part. I wasn't really a big believer of this until I went to Bayside, and I just saw what they did there, and it just blows your socks off. And so in the smaller church over in Northern California, when we did the VBS, we implemented some of the ideas, but on a smaller scale compared to Bayside, but still wow factor. Okay, so for example, for our ocean theme, we created entrance. Think about entrances, where people are coming in and the first thing that they see. So this is actually just made of styrofoam. That's one of our favorite materials. It's super cheap. It's only for a 4x8, it's 20 bucks a sheet, I think. You can use both sides, just flip it over the next year, use the other side. So styrofoam is awesome. You can do freestanding structures. This was something we did. It was a jungle theme. And so somebody built this, and it's pretty cool looking. Think about the lobby focal point. So ocean theme, we made this boat, also made out of styrofoam as well, with a PVC pipe mast. Didn't cost a lot of money, just took a lot of time. And then there's just balloons hanging from the ceiling, inflatable animals we got on Amazon. So people walked in and went, wow, that's so cool, right? We have this key focal point. For our Saturday Night Live, what we did is we had a stage. This was for our Fiesta night. We had a stage, and we would just leave it in the lobby, because then when people came in the next day, they'd be like, oh, wow, I totally missed something. What happened? And so that creates attention and awareness of the event. And then over the weeks, we saw more and more people starting to come in. Think about hallways, how you could decorate them. So we made balloon arches, which usually cost a ton of money, but ours was like practically free because it was just PVC pipe, and then we just blew balloons and tied it to the pipe. So, inflatable dolphins. These were jellyfish in the hallway, paper plates and ribbon. That's basically it. And fishing string. Yeah. So decorations, decor can be a huge impact, but they don't have to be very expensive. It's just a matter of being creative. Think about the little touches, little centerpieces on the table. This was just paper cactus things cut out and stuck in rocks in little bowls. For the tropical theme, they actually took fake bird of paradise and they just stuck them in the planters that were already outside, so it looked like it was the tropics. And the thing about lighting, lighting is really huge. It changes the whole place. I mean, imagine this room, which it usually was with just fluorescent lights, kind of like this. But then you string Christmas lights, you turn on fluorescent lights, it looks night and day. It's an amazing Christmas experience. Decorations don't have to be expensive. This is an example of what I was talking about, the styrofoam boards. Actually, this was just canvas stretched on wood, I think. And what we did was we projected an image onto there. We had volunteers draw in the outlines, and it was paint by number. So they painted this nice backdrop for our drama, for our VBS, and it cost practically nothing. This was given to us by another church for our Ocean VBS, and it was all made by kids and teenagers. And they would work a weekly basis. It's a big tarp, and I think it's painted just in tempera paint or something like that. It looked great in our lobby. This is an example of a tent stage set that I did, and the only cost was for the fabric. If you look underneath, it looks terrible. It's like a coat rack, some pipe and drape poles. It's actually not very big. It's Abraham's tent is what we were trying to create. I think we bought one pot at IKEA and a couple palm things, but that's like the palm tree for like office, a rug that was lying around the church, some pots we found in the back storage room, And so steal from other parts of the church. Whatever's available, just borrow it for your event and then put it back afterwards. You can save yourself lots of money. The ambience part can also, it can be smaller expressions. It doesn't have to be fancy. This was for Father's Day, and just creating, getting a runner and then just creating a sign and little circular things on the table just made it look fantastic. You can get a couple flowers and so forth. It's not very expensive, it's not fancy, but it makes a huge impact when you walk out and just see lots of tables like this. Okay, preparation. So preparation, there's a ton of different things. I'm just giving you high-level highlights. As a reminder for those who were not here earlier, details on how to run an event are in this book, Christian Conference and Event Planner. It's got 18 different chapters of lots of checklists, activities, examples, mistakes other volunteers did. So I'm not going to get into the specific logistics because that's beyond the scope of this workshop, because I'm already talking about a minute trying to get through all of this. But preparation is key, because these are all the things that you do in order to get ready for your event. So tools, what kind of tools are you going to use? What we primarily use is Google Docs. We have a master document that has a million tabs, so it'll be like timetable, volunteers, budget, vendors, etc., schedules, whatever. So like, our main event thing had like 15 different tabs on it. You just keep all the information in there. Or you could do a Word document type of thing on Google Docs where you have all these different areas. And what I would do is copy and paste in emails, because when you're running a big event, you end up with hundreds and hundreds of emails and it's too hard to find them. So I would paste in key information in here. I can instantly look it up. The other reason we do this is because of the Mack truck rule, right? If you get hit by a Mack truck and you're not there, somebody else can pull out the Google Doc and they can see all the details. They'll be able to know who to contact, what's going on, what the timetables are, and everything. So we use Google Docs. It's a really, really huge tool that we use. Finance is super important because you have to determine what are your financial goals. You're going to break even, you make profit, hopefully you won't lose money, right? Figure out what your culture and the market will bear. So for example, our church was used to having free food, but we realized to do these Saturday night events, not going to work if we offer free food, so we started charging for it. But it was cheap. $3 for a whole dinner, right? It was like roast pork and macaroni salad and dessert for $3. Like, you can't get that anywhere. And so over time, what we've done is we've created a culture where now people are starting to pay for food so that we can create better events and sustain more people, make them sustainable. Okay. So think about the culture of your church in terms of financial model. Registration or sign up. Some are just walk-ups. Sometimes you need people to register in advance. But think about how will you do that? What's the easy way to do it? We use short links. So we have a short link called sbi.link/ and we'll put the event. Okay, so that way people don't have to say www.saddleback.com/ blah 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 / blah blah blah. It's just one short link that people do it and they can go to the event. We use the QR codes, the square things too. So make it really, really easy for people to register. Think about donations too. Tap into people's ability to be able to be generous, and they want to contribute, but maybe they can't be at the event. So for the VBS, we created poll tags. So many people have to work during the day, they can't be there, but they would love to be able to donate something for the kids. This was just a display presentation board by Office Max, A4 envelopes, invitation size, and then we made little pieces of paper that had items that they could donate. This is the version we did at Saddleback. Took an old board, I took vinyl tablecloths, wrapped it around, and then just jute and string, little clothespins, and little tags paper. Not expensive, made a big impact. But what was really cool is that people could go up and say, oh, hey, I want to buy that. I can buy some balloons, a pack of balloons. Sure. And people to actually make multiple pull tags. And that way now you've got your whole church involved in this event. Think about vendors. What kind of vendors do you need? For example, t-shirt vendors, water bottle vendors. We use inflatables a lot. We've done like laser tag vendors. I mean, whatever that is, as I mentioned before, cultivating those relationships. And then logistics are huge. It's set up, tear down, who's doing what, when, where, how, where does everything go afterwards? Cleanup plan, that's something we always forget, How does everybody know, where do people check in? Those are all the logistical features. And then work days. What are days that you can schedule in advance of your event to be able to prep for it? Takes a big load off when people do that. We had a project shelf. So for our VBS, people could, everything was in baggies. They could go just grab a baggie and take it home. Had the instructions, when it needed to be due, what they needed to do, and they would come and they could bring it back. So get people involved that way. And then follow-up. Follow-up is key. And this, someone was asking earlier about when new people come to your church event, how do you follow up? It's really hard. We don't really measure our success in terms of how many new people there were often because there's really no way to track that. A lot of it is word of mouth. But for our fall festival that we had this past week, we created a card. And so what we did was he said, for safety and for safety reasons, we want people to fill this out because what would happen was they would fill out their name information, they would check this is my first time at Saddleback church event, or I'd like to stay connected, updated about other events happening, and then the kids would get a wristband. That way we knew that all the kids with wristbands, they were good, they had a parent with them, right? So we're trying to watch out for the safety, but on the other end, we're also trying to capture contact information of new people. So we found out 92 new families came to our event, which was really awesome. And now we've got our follow-up team following up with them to welcome them to Saddleback. So those are the 7 steps, and then at the end, it's time to do the event. And so all of your work will have paid off, and hopefully everything will go smoothly because you've covered all these 7 areas. And then after the event, the last step will be evaluation. Looking back, did we meet our goals? What went well? What didn't go well? We always do a debrief afterwards. Okay. If you'd like further information, I do have a blog, AngelaYee.com, and I love to blog. It's called Visual Church Leader, and I blog about events, leadership, fun creative things, things like that. So you can do that. You can sign up for an email. It'll get sent to you. It's actually kind of behind, but I try to post when I can, and you'll just get an email about that. And then, as I mentioned, the book, it's on sale at the resource center downstairs. So we have 5 minutes for Q&A. Questions?
What have you found to be very helpful in sort of like planning and training your team? So like you're doing the recruitment part, but how do you train your members when they have like full-time jobs and they have limited time?
Yes.
And they're just exhausted. Like, what's like a reasonable amount?
Yeah.
Because after a full day of work, you just want to like Netflix binge.
Totally.
So how do you add like what's a reasonable amount? And can I ask 2 questions?
Yeah.
And the second question is, I know, so greedy. The second question is, I've noticed churches kind of deal with the tension of having rotating teams.
Yes.
But then the tension that I found with that, or tension I've noticed, is there's loss of consistency.
Mm-hmm.
So the people they're dealing with, there's often a loss of connections. There's always new people coming in.
Yes.
So how do you deal with those 2 tensions?
So I think there's different answers if you're talking about ongoing ministry teams or events teams.
Yes.
So if you think about an events team, okay, so number 1 is the training. To be honest, we don't do a lot of training for our volunteers. It's pretty much on-the-job training, right? We're changing that. We're actually developing a new volunteer training that will happen starting this month, where anybody who signs up to serve on a weekend service or for an event, we have a 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. service. So if you go to one service, it's training during the other one. It's only like 30, 45 minutes. We're covering things like biblical basis for serving, the values of Saddleback, just people skills, what's important, eye contact, simple things like that. We're taking them on a tour around our building to show them where do you get the coffee machine, where do you find the toilet paper, stuff like that. So it's just a one-time thing. Once you do it, you're done. Most of our events, people just get trained on the job. Here's your leader, they'll tell you what to do, that kind of thing. VBS is different though, because VBS is a really intensive event for the whole week. We actually have like a Sunday lunch training. So it's after service, for lunch for an hour, we just do the training. And then we have a weeknight for those who can't make it on Sunday. So it's one-time training as well. So most of the time, Saddleback's philosophy in general is to undertrain, because people are more motivated to learn once they're in the hot seat. And so we'll give them the basics on getting the job started, but then a lot of it's just kind of one-on-one informal coaching. Yeah.
How often do you think churches should have events? Because my church, we kind of only do stuff in the summertime because we try to keep our small groups doing stuff during the year. But for me, I think that it's good to every once in a while have the whole church all get together, but it's kind of a lot of logistics. So what do you think is effective as a church that's maybe not as large, but still wants that unity?
Yeah. So it depends on your church. And actually, Kevin and I had a conversation about this last week because we do a lot of events, right? So one of the things that we talked about was that we try to do events when people are most open to visiting. So we do them during holidays like Easter. We have a big pancake breakfast. We rent a train that goes around the parking lot. We have egg hunt, things like that, right? So Easter, Christmas, Halloween. That's the main one. And then various little ones. So for example, the Saturday night service, because nobody was coming, right, dead season, we generated events to generate momentum, right? So it's just kind of looking at your whole church's calendar year and kind of the strategic direction. It'll vary, yeah. Good question though. Okay, one more. 1 minute. Yeah.
How do you deal with people burning out? Because I remember being at a mega church where we do events back to back and people were just not happy anymore and even one attended as me.
Totally. So I burned out myself after working at the church that was crazy events. My 1 week, I did 124 hours. So, and it was just ongoing like that all the time. So I ended up having a total health crash. So I totally have a heart for people burning out. So number 1 is any person that you find, ask them to find a partner. Because that's a great way for them to share the load and then for them to trade off over time. So that's one thing. Number two is, this is a big faith factor. If people burn out and they come to me and say, I'm burned out, I say, rest, go rest. God will provide. And God has never failed me yet. We might be a little short-handed, but I really, really believe that if this is God's event and He wants it to happen, that He does make it happen. And so we have allowed a number of leaders to step down because they were burned out. So, and then number three is just looking at their load, right? Having that ongoing conversation in terms of, hey, how are things feeling for you? What's going on in your life right now? Do you need to take a little bit of a break? This is a slow season right now, don't do anything. Just trying to help them to think through that. Some people are just natural yes people, and they put too much on their plate, and so it's helpful to have somebody who really cares about them. Great questions. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. If you have questions, please come.
Oh, wait, you too. Yeah.